have this vivid memory of sitting in the bathtub one time and just crying.
I think I punched my dad once.
You're not in charge of me right now. Like, you just won't leave me alone.
I had an epidural in my back, so I couldn't move very well.
She just wanted me to keep pushing and keep going.
Everybody had one. Like, if you didn't have one, you were looked down upon.
This is a show where teenagers share their experiences growing up in today's world. I'm your host, Dr. RJ, and this is A Teen's Perspective.
Today is going to be the last of the 4 mental blocks that we talked about. This is probably the most important one. For the past 5 weeks, I believe, we have been discussing what I call mental blocks. We already discovered the idea that success in anything you do is 80% mental, and then 20% is the mechanics. So when we all talked 5 weeks ago and we said, hey, we want to make straight A's this school year, then the way we are going about doing that is identifying the things that's going to hold us back. Because I guarantee you, anytime you started school, you probably never looked at it this way. You probably thought about like, oh, okay, I need to do time management, needs to improve. And I need to pay attention in school, right? In class. I'm going to study more. That's usually what people think whenever they're trying to do better in school. But this is a completely different way of thinking because we're identifying the true 4 reasons why you're not performing at the level that you know you could perform at. So let's see if you guys remember these. Who knows the 4? Put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, either one. All right. Okay, that's it. Maddie and Kelly, assumptions. There's 4 of them. We have assumptions. What are the other ones? All right. Maddie and Kelly says is limiting beliefs. Yes. Connor said the beliefs. Yes. Prim says villains. Prim, how did you know that? And Maddie and Kelly said interpretation. So yes, you guys nailed it. Great job. High five to Maddie and Kelly, Prim, Connor. Good job. So essentially, that's what we did. 5 weeks ago, we kind of introduced all of the mental blocks. And then the next week after that, we talked about limiting beliefs. And if you were there for that, you know that a limiting belief is any belief that limits you. I mean, it's pretty much what it is. All the things that we do are based on our beliefs. So think about that. Everything you do is based on beliefs. So if you have a belief that limits you, then obviously you will not reach your full potential. So we really spent some time talking about the limiting beliefs. If you're part of the Life Scholars Academy, we have that in the members area. So you can go rewatch it if you missed it. All right. So the next one was interpretation. So that was the one we did the next week, interpretations. And we talked about how interpretations are nothing more than guesses. That's all they are. Like we guess so much, but unfortunately, we're going to learn about why this is the case today. We guess usually in a negative light, generally speaking. Right now, if you were to like snap somebody and then they didn't respond and they left you on red, naturally you're going to think that maybe you made them mad, something's wrong with you, they don't like you. I mean, these are just guesses in our head. And the reason we guess is because we can't read minds. Sometimes I feel like I wish I can read minds. Other points, I'm like, I'm glad I can't read minds. But that's the only way you're going to know what people truly think. So then the next week, we went to assumptions. So assumptions are things that we assume about our future based on our past. Perfect example. If some of you guys struggle in math and we're deciding, say, hey, guys, we're going to make this pack. Like all of us 5 weeks ago said, hey, we're going to make straight A's this year. If you thought in your head like, oh, man, I want to make straight A's, but I've never made straight A's in my life, then that can actually hold you back because you're assuming just because you haven't done it before, it's supposed to mean that you can't do it again. But remember, we're a different person now, right? We know more information, so of course we can do it. So assumptions, we talked about that last week. And we also did a really cool thing, how to kind of break up memories that keep you stuck. Who here remember that technique? I know Zion's tried it. Who else? Who else remember that? Okay, here we go. Maddie and Kelly just said it. So if there's a memory that you are stuck by, and this is often times where assumptions come to play. I think the last one we talked about was how you had a bad experience with a friend. I think you guys actually brought up Alexis maybe mentioned or someone, I don't remember. Somebody was like, hey, I had a friend who like told all of my business at the entire school. So guess what that would do? Because you're scarred by that memory, it's going to be harder for you to open up to new friends because you're still stuck in something that happened in the past. You're stuck in that memory. So what I showed everyone last week was how to distort your memory. It's super cool. I know, super cool. When you think about life in general, where does life happen? All right, I want you guys to think about that for a little bit. Where does life happen? So if an alien from Mars came and was like, hey, what is life? Like, where is life? What would be your response? That's it. See, Maddie and Kelly, they're not giving anyone an opportunity to guess. But no, they're straight on. That is it. It's in your mind. That's it. Life happens in the mind. Now, I'm not trying to say it's some like matrix stuff where you're not here or anything like that. What I am saying is how we see life, whether we think that life is amazing, fun, or is it boring, or I don't like life at the moment, is all based on what we're thinking about. So something can happen to two people and it'd be two different results. I have an example for you. So as you know, I'm orthodontist. So oftentimes we get people moving to Austin because it's a cool place to live and they still have braces on. So they need to transfer somewhere. So they come to me. But, you know, it's funny how one kid can come in and be like super, super excited about Austin. Like, hey, I'm so excited. You know, I'm going to this school. I'm going to meet some new friends. This is so exciting, a new place. And then guess what? The next person can come in and just mad, not talking. Won't even talk to their parents. Won't even look at their parents in the eye because they're so mad at their parents because they had to move. It's like, I miss my friends. This is terrible. This is horrible. So you ask yourself, was it the move that is what life is about? Your experience in life, was it the move or was it how you thought about the move? Obviously, if you thought positively about the move and you start to look forward to the idea of meeting new people and experiencing new things, then life is exciting for you right now. But if you're the kid who's like, all they can think about is their friends from back where they came from and their house and the environment or whatever, and they're thinking that moving to Austin is a terrible mistake and they will make no friends, well, guess what? Life, it will be miserable for them. So that's just so important to know that. So that's why last week we talked about assumptions. Like if you have a bad memory, then you can actually distort the memory in a way where it will not have an impact on you anymore. It's the coolest thing ever. I'm telling you, like it's so, so cool because oftentimes we are either stuck in the past or thinking about the future, oftentimes. So there's a way to manipulate our mind in a way so that we're not stuck in the past, then we're going to experience better things for sure. So today we are going to talk about the final mental block. And as you notice that these were like a ladder, so it gets harder as you go. So for limiting beliefs, at the very first level, we actually talked about different beliefs. We introduced new beliefs where we were like, hey, do you accept this belief or do you deny this belief? And I think one of the beliefs that everyone accepted, I think we all agreed on the belief that there's a purpose in every situation or something like that, right? You guys remember that? We accepted that belief because that belief empowers us. Okay, here we go. Maddie and Kelly, thank you for that. You can learn from every situation. So that's a belief system, right? Because some people may feel like you can't learn from any situation. They feel like bad things are bad, good things are good. But you could also change your belief system to believe that every situation has value and there's something that you can learn from. And that's a belief that empowers us because we all agree that it does. All right. So that was the easy one. Well, this one is a hard one. I'm telling you that now. So get prepared. All right. I want you to be completely prepared for the villain. Everyone has a villain. I call it a villain because I like superheroes. And when I make analogies, in fact, I actually wrote a book. It's called How to Train Your Superhero. I just like seeing things in a way of like a superhero and a villain and things like that. But anyway, I'm calling it a villain. But basically, it's this voice in your head, everyone has it, that tells you that you are not enough. That's what the villain is. It's a voice in your head that tells you you're not enough. Now, why do we have this? I don't know. You know, that's one of the situations that comes to belief. You believe whatever empowers you. I choose to believe that this villain, although it has like a negative connotation to it, is trying to protect me. That's the way I view it. Now, other people may view it something else, but I view the villain as this voice or this like biological switch in our brain that tries to keep us alive. It tries to protect us. So in the process of protecting us, it actually limits us. It holds us back. Imagine if, you're riding a bike and your parents never let you take off the training wheels. Imagine that, because they're trying to protect you. It's like they mean well. Hey, I don't want you to fall and hurt yourself. In fact, everybody know who's been here. I broke both of my wrists like 8 weeks ago off of a bike. All right. So your parents are trying to protect you. But could you imagine yourself 14, 15, riding a bike on training wheels? Man, what you're going to need is not life coach. You're going to need therapy for that. Because I'm sure it'll be hard to overcome that, to be honest. So hopefully none of you guys have training wheels. But that is how I view the villain. My villain is here to just keep me at bay, to not do anything amazing because it doesn't want me to be embarrassed or it doesn't hurt me. It want to keep me safe. That's how I view the villain. All right. So however you view your villain, the point of the matter is you're not enough. All right. You're just not enough. Some of you believe that your villain is telling you that you're not pretty enough. Others are saying my villain is telling me I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not creative enough. It's always like you're just not enough. Trust me, everyone has this, everyone. And the way that you know that you have this is anytime that you're hard on yourself. Think about it. I want you to think about the last time that you guys were very hard on yourself, whether someone was mean to you and you thought to yourself, I'm worthless, or maybe you tried really hard and you lost the game, whether it's basketball, volleyball, and then you went home and you thought, I'm not good, right? So share with me, you can do it privately too. You can send private chats, but share with me your last experience of you just like kind of being down on yourself and like what words did you hear or say? So you can just put it in the chat. You can share with everyone if you want to, or you could just send me a private message. I'm curious to see. I want to use a real life example here. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to switch positions. People who remember that every 20 minutes, you want to shift your position. All right, so I shifted in position, and let's see what I found here. Let's see here. Who wants to share? So this person said someone tells them a lot that, hey, it's good, but you can do better. So essentially, what you tend to believe in the voice in your head that supports that is you're not enough, right? You're not enough. It's great, but it's okay, but you can do better. Yeah, someone else said the villain is keeping me from doing my homework. Yeah. So maybe your villain is saying, hey, you're not smart enough. Right? It's always the word enough is in it. All right. That's what your villain is telling you. Now, I remember when I first discovered my villain. Some of you may not even know what your villain is saying, but don't worry, we'll figure it out. I'll teach you how to identify your villain. But I'm going to tell you when I first discovered mine. It was about 3 years ago. I can't remember. When I discovered my villain, because I was going through this process, and then that's when I learned about these voices in our heads. But anyway, when I discovered my villain, I was like, honestly, when I first read about like these voices in my head, I'm like, hey, I'm good. I have nothing in my mind that's telling me that I'm not enough. Like I'm very confident. I'm very successful. I'm happy. I have great relationships. Like life is great. So I'm like, I don't think I have this. And then, the professor was like, everyone has it. Trust me. And I like denied it. I fought it. And then it wasn't until a random situation that happened that the light bulb went off, that I actually have a villain. And my villain tells me that I'm not enough. Obviously, all of our villains says that. But specifically, that the work that I do is not enough. That's what my villain tells me. So, like perfect example right now, like I'm pouring into you guys and all that. Say, for instance, like half of you just dropped the call right now, just left the call. My villain would be telling me, see, what you're doing is not enough. People don't care about what you're doing. And through this journey, I've had to come to grips with that. I had to address my villain because I actually felt that way. There was a time early on when I was coaching teenagers, I really was like ready to give up, to be honest. I was just like, look, teenagers do not care about this kind of stuff. No matter what I do, they're not going to care and it's not going to make an impact. So this is what happened to me early on. Because like the first few teenagers I coached, I didn't really know how to present it to the parents in a way that would excite the kid. So when the kid got on the phone, the parents like forced them to be on the phone. So then they're just sitting there with their arms folded, like, I don't want to be here. And I'm trying to talk to them and they're not responding. So I'm like, so my villain was there right in my ear, like, listen, you're wasting your time. You need to go just focus on straightening teeth. You don't have to talk straightening teeth. But it was just like, hey, whatever you do is not going to be enough. Once I noticed and discovered that was my villain, it explains so much about me. I was talking to my wife And once I discovered my villain, we also started laughing because we're like, that is why I have the hardest time celebrating wins. I do. I had the hardest time celebrating. Perfect example, like for my practice. When I first opened my practice, it was supposed to be this huge celebration. So it took me 8-9 months to open the practice. I opened the practice, no celebration. I'm like, nope, it's fine. I got to get to work. I got to do this. So now I picked another goal. And I get to this next goal and be like, nope, I got to get another goal. And it's like I kept going in this pattern where I could never celebrate until I recognized, hey, that's my villain telling me what you just did, what you just accomplished, it's not enough. It's not enough. Why would you celebrate it? It's not enough. So that's how my villain speaks to me. And that's how my villain interferes with what I do. So now I overcome my villain a couple ways. Number one is I recognize that I have the villain. That's the first key, is knowing what your villain is saying. Who's your villain? What are they saying? You know, when I was doing this process, they made us name our villain. I didn't have a name because at the time I didn't know I had one. I still don't have a name, but I know what he says. So that is the first step for you guys. It's first to recognize that you have a villain. But number two is to identify what that villain is telling you. And remember, the core of what all of our villains are saying is that we're just not enough. All right? We're not enough. But specifically, what are they saying to you? So I want you guys to take some time to think about it a little bit. And I want you to send me a message when you know what your villain is saying to you, and we'll talk about it. All right, so here's somebody right now. They said postpone things for later. So in other words, there's procrastination. All right, so if you find yourself procrastinating, you always want to check why. And I'm telling you, it's your villain. Something in your head is telling your villain. Either it's saying that you're not smart enough, that you won't get this anyway, so you might as well wait till the last minute. Or it may be like my villain said, hey, you can study all you want, but it won't be enough. So I want you guys to really think through your villain here. So while you guys are thinking about this, I want to tell you why this is important. The reason this is extremely important is because based on what your villain says will determine on how much success, how much happiness will you reach your full potential. Your villain is really the bigger reason you're not doing well in school or in sports or why you don't have friends. It's hard for you to make friends. You do not know how many people I coach who have this fear of meeting new people. It's like so scary. They get super anxious. I mean, it's so scary just to walk up to somebody and talk to them and try to be their friend. It's so hard. And the reason why they're anxious, so if you suffer from anxiety, I would check your villain. What is your villain saying? And in this case, they're saying that, hey, you're not enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not fun enough. You're not a good friend. There's nothing interesting about you that no one else would think would be interesting. You know, because if you put yourself out there, they're going to laugh at you. You're going to be awkward. So that's why it's so important for you guys to identify. All right, here we go. This person says that my villain tells me that my parents do not love me. That's a big one. I want you guys to really think about how impactful those words can be over your life. Not only will it interrupt the relationship with your parents, but it may interrupt the relationship with other people, you know, like your friends. It may interrupt the relationship you have with yourself, essentially. Like you may not want to try something because you just feel like you're not good enough. Like, hey, my parents do not love me. I'm not good enough. Something is wrong with me. So the first way to defeat these villains is to, one, know you have a villain. So for everyone, I need at least 5 thumbs up. I need a thumbs up from 5 different people if you get it. If you say, yes, I have a villain. Before we go to the next one, I got to know that people understand that they have a villain. So Tola, who else? Leah, Kyle, Kathy, Kaylee. Hey, Kaylee, she gave me a thumbs up. Thank you for that. Zion, thanks. Tola, Prim. Who else on here? Cassidy. All right, perfect. So each one of you guys get this. All right. So we all know we have a villain. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, what is your villain saying? All right. The reason why this is important that you need to know what they're saying is because that will explain a lot of what you do. I promise you. Like I told you, my wife and I, we were shocked to be like, hey, why can't you just celebrate a win? You know, your goal was to get 30 patients in braces this month. You made 35, but you can't even celebrate it. Why? Because my villain is telling me you're not enough. And guess what happens with that? It takes joy out of life. Because think about how much fun I would have to reach a goal and like literally celebrate it. Celebrate my team, my wife, like celebrate that I just accomplished this goal, right? And guess what's going to happen if I would have continued on with this path? You know, because I'm still young. I don't care what you guys say, but I'm young. But if I just kept this going, I probably would have like a midlife crisis when I'm like 50, to be honest. Because guess what? This voice in my head will be telling me constantly, you're not enough. Everything you're doing is not enough. So then I'll be 50 years old. I'm looking at my life. I'm like, wait a minute. I've done all these things. It means nothing. And I have another 50 years to look forward to nothing, right? And that's when I would like go join a motorcycle gang or something, get some tattoos on my neck and all that. But no. And if your parents are in a motorcycle gang, maybe they enjoy motorcycles. I don't want to offend anybody. But my point I'm trying to say is it's important to know that because it literally is like stealing joy out of your life. I think the example I used before was like, I'm a big guy that loves ice cream and cookies. Like them two to me are like, they're meant to be together, to be honest. Like you may think peanut butter and jelly is meant to be together. Nope. Ice cream and cookies, they're like meant for each other. Like it's like a perfect combination. So if I was to eat ice cream by itself, it would be good. No question. It would be delicious. But if we put cookies on top of the ice cream, warm cookies, warm chocolate chip cookies, all right, it's so much better. Well, I'm telling you, that is how it's going to work with your villain. You may be making it through life pretty good. You may be like, hey, I'm pretty happy. I have good friends, all that. And you're probably eating just ice cream. All right. But if you discover your villain and you learn how to overcome your villain, it's going to be like ice cream and cookies. I promise you. Like you're going to start enjoying life that much more. You may be at like an 8, you go to like a 12. In fact, it works because as soon as I recognize my villain, we celebrate all the time. Like we're always doing something. I'm like, hey, I woke up this morning, a celebration. No, I'm joking. But the point I'm trying to say is that I celebrate more now and life is definitely more fun. It makes me more grateful, to be honest. It puts me in a place where I can like look over all of my hard work and see that I am making a difference, right? It's like makes life better. All right, so somebody else gave me a villain here. My villain tells me that people would not be interested in getting to know me, even if they act like they are. See, this is great. This is powerful. This is extremely powerful because his villain is telling him that he's not enough, right? Everybody's villain says something about you not being enough, but specifically his villain is saying that, listen, I don't care who you are or how interesting you may be. No one would ever care about getting to know you because you're not enough. No one would care. And guess what that would do if he continued with that mindset the rest of his life? Would he have a great life? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, he's a nice guy. He's smart. He's going to have a pretty good life. But will it be the ice cream and the cookies? Not as long as you have that villain there. Not as long as you're walking through life thinking that when I meet somebody, I'm not interesting. No one really cares about getting to know me. Even though they're like acting like they care to know me, they truly don't know me. Are you guys hearing this? This is so important. That's why I saved the villain for the last one, because this is huge. If you can learn how to overcome this villain, you're going to just experience life much more than where you are now. So step 1 is identifying the villain or knowing that you have a villain. So we already had thumbs up, so everybody knows that. The next thumbs up I need from you guys is once you know what your villain is saying. Now, most of you should be able to figure it out now. A few of you are going to be like me, and it's going to take you like weeks, months. Something is going to happen. You'll be like, oh, that is my villain. Now, one way to try to discover your villain and what they're saying is to think of it like something that's consistent. So what has been consistent with you as far as your thoughts up until now? Like what is consistent? So like in this case, I don't have really meaningful friendships. All right. Well, why? Why is it that you, in fact, I'm coaching someone now. It's very interesting. I'm coaching this person now and they're like, I enjoy doing theater, but the group at theater is so toxic. All right. So they told me the first time, it says very toxic. I'm like, okay. So it's like, I quit theater. So then I started doing dance, but then dance, the group, they're so toxic. So I'm quitting dance. And it was like, well, I'm like, okay, well, tell me about your friends. Well, I don't really have many friends. And it's because they're just toxic, right? So this is a pattern because, for me, I'm like, hey, there's one common denominator in all those 3 things you just told me, right? So what I'm saying is it's a villain. It's clearly her villain. Her villain is telling her that either she's not enough, she's not good enough. In her case, she made the comment that she just didn't think that people didn't like her because she was not pretty. She didn't think she was pretty. All right. So if you ever look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I'm ugly, that is a villain clearly. Because one, who decides on beauty? Let's think about that. When you truly think about it, who decides what is beautiful? You do. That's it. You do. Now, granted, This is a marketing society. We're constantly being marketed to constantly. So yeah, you're seeing these flashes of this image that whatever the company is wanting you to become, like this image they think is beautiful for whatever reason. I mean, usually it's analytics and sales. It has nothing to do with their personal beliefs, but they flash this image and you say, okay, I'm comparing myself to that image. Well, clearly I'm not that image. So you start to think like, well, maybe I'm not pretty enough. And I feel sorry for you guys because you guys are growing up. Some of you are really younger, growing up with social media. I didn't have to deal with that. Social media. I'm not saying that social media is a bad thing. I think it's actually pretty cool. But what I am saying is that it can put more pressure on you because you guys are seeing perfection constantly with all these filters and these selfie photos. Like you take it a certain way, you don't go low or you go high, you turn and show. Man, it's hard, right? It's some pressure. So if you're constantly looking at like TikTok and Snapchat and, all these pictures on Instagram, then it's going to be hard for you to quiet down your villain, to be honest, because your villain is supporting it. It's like, yeah, man, you're not pretty enough. That's the reason why you don't have friends. And we know that's not the case. You don't base a friendship off of them being pretty. Let's be for real. All right. So it's so important for you to find your villain. Now, I need thumbs up once you know what your villain is telling you. Give me thumbs up. When you have locked down what your villain is saying, thumbs up. Now, if you have a particular question for me you want me to answer, you can also ask that question in the chat. All right, and switch positions. So I'm going to just stretch a little here. All right, I shifted my position. And now I'm looking for these comments. All right, thumbs up from Maddie and Kelly. Kathy said, hey, Kathy, how's it going? Prim says thumbs up. All right, here we go. We have a villain. Laziness. All right. And I'm glad this person brought this up because whenever you're trying to discover your villain, it's important to look at patterns. And the way you look at patterns is you have an unbelievable amount of potential, an unbelievable amount, more than you can believe, to be honest. All right. And if you are looking at anything where you're not performing the way you should perform, look to the villain. All right. So this person brought up laziness. All right. So this villain is the reason why he's lazy, I'm certain. But we have to listen. What is the villain telling him? Maybe it's telling him that, hey, you're not good enough. Anything you do will be meaningless. Or maybe you're not smart enough. So there's no point of studying. No one would appreciate what you do because you're not enough, right? So that's what's contributing to the laziness. And the other person said self-deprecation. Perfect. So this is what this is. Basically this villain is telling you these things. Now, often you will not consciously be aware of it. So that's the thing I want to tell you guys. We talked about last time how you could be conscious or your subconscious is kind of taking over. We know that our subconscious takes over 95% of the time. Right now, some of you guys, subconscious are taking over. In fact, I'm certain at least half of you, the subconscious is the one that put the thumbs up because you're thinking about something in the future or you're thinking about something in the past. You're not even in the present. All right. So that voice, that villain is quiet now. It's not in your face, but you could tell based on your actions. It's a little voice. It's yeah, you're not enough. And you don't do it. All right. So now we are at step 3. So step 1 is to know that you have a villain, which you guys know. 2 is knowing what the villain says. And 3 is conquering the villain. All right. So how do you conquer your villain? Well, there's a couple ways you do this. So number 1, you conquer your villain by telling the opposite, by saying the opposite. So in other words, your villain is more so in the subconscious. So your villain is telling you you're not enough. But guess what you do when you're conscious? You tell yourself, I am enough. So whenever I accomplish something, I already start to tell myself as I'm pursuing this goal, I already know what my villain's going to tell me, right? I already know it. So the power is lost from the villain. I know he's going to say that whatever I'm doing is not enough. It's not significant enough. So what I'm going to do is tell myself, this is significant. So as I'm doing this, I'm this is big. So before I get on the call with you guys, every Sunday or every time I talk to you guys, I'm hey, this is going to impact someone's life. I know it will. I'm not giving my villain an opportunity to try to tell me that what I'm doing is meaningless. Does that make sense? So that's one way. So one way is to tell your villain the opposite of what they're saying. So they're saying, hey, your mommy and daddy doesn't love you. You say, hey, who are you, villain? Right? You don't control anything here. My mom and dad does love me. Or the villain might say, hey, you're lazy. Nope, I'm not lazy. I just choose to relax. No, I'm joking. But you want to be no, I'm going to prove my villain wrong. I'm going to go do something. So that's what you want to do with your villain. All right. So one thing you want to do is just say the opposite. The second thing you want to do is to actually do the opposite, right? So you say the opposite and you do things of the opposite. So for me, what we do is we plan a celebration in advance. So what I do is like, okay, I have a goal to impact this many teenagers' life each month. And I have a big goal. My goal is 10,000 in a year. So I already have a celebration plan, right? So I'm doing the opposite of what the villain would tell me, because I know what my villain's going to say. As soon as I get to like 980, my villain was like, hey, that's not enough, man. 10,000 not enough. You need to do 100,000, right? And it's different. Like, I want to keep going, but I also want to appreciate what I've done so I don't get burned out. Does that make sense to you guys? Thumbs up if that makes sense. So the way you overtake your villain is what? What are the two things? Let me make sure everybody's paying attention. So Randall, I see you, my friend. So give me the two things. Nishka, how you doing? Tell me, what are the two things? How do you overcome your villain? It's two things.
One way is to say the opposite.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about. Good job. What else?
The second one.
Who knows the second one? Help them out. Who knows it? Max, Derek, the Beach family. Come on. What's the second one? You say the opposite. So in my case, my villain is telling me, do the opposite. Maddie and Kelly, here for the rescue. Yes, you do the opposite. So in the case of somebody who was like, hey, my villain is contributing to me being lazy. Well, what do? Don't be lazy. You don't be lazy. You go and try to be productive. There's plenty of things to do. So many things to do. I'm telling you, there's so much to do. You go be productive. Just purposely do something productively. Let me explain this to you. This is probably something that I've been wanting to share with you guys for some time, and I'm going to share it now. I need you to think of your mind a certain way, because the only way you guys are going to make a crazy amount of change and a shift in your mindset is if you understand what your mind is actually doing. Now, most people live their life in their mind. They're inside their mind. So, people say you're in your head. They're in their mind. So every thought that goes in their head, they think is from them, right? And this is what most people do. Think about it. Like, everything that goes in your mind, you think is you. So even the fact that you have a villain, your villain is saying, hey, you're not good enough. Why would you listen to it? That doesn't make sense, right? But it's because we all are attached to what goes on in our mind. The way I like to describe this is with a car. My favorite car is a Tesla Model X. That's the car that I drive. And it's not because of the wing doors, although they're pretty cool. It's not even because it self-drives, although that's extremely cool. I really got it because of the advancements they make regularly. All right. So when I first got this car, it could drive by itself, but it couldn't drive by itself on residential streets. But literally a month ago, they made an update to it, and now it recognizes stop signs. That's cool. Come on now. Like, the car literally just driving by itself and like, oh, the stop sign stops. It recognizes red lights, green lights, yellow lights. It's all cool. So that's why I got the car. But my point, the reason why I want to use this car as the analogy is because that is how we all are in our mind. I want you to think of your mind as the Tesla Model X. That is your mind. That Tesla has been placed. We don't know where your mind is at, to be honest. We don't have no clue. Researchers have zero idea where the mind is, right? That's why we can't explain everything. We understand we have a brain. We know that. We understand that our brain makes connections and there's neurons and all that, but no one has a clue where the mind is. We point to our head because that's, the brain is handling a lot, but we don't know. Your mind could actually be in your toe. Could be. Your mind could be on Mars. Who knows? You could be in a completely different dimension. Honestly, I believe it is. I actually believe our minds are in like a different dimension, because I always talk about the invisible versus the visible. Like all the things that we see in the visible, those things happen. But really, most of what's happening is in the things we can't see, like our thoughts, right? We can't see our thoughts. We can't see our feelings. You may see me like do all this if I'm mad, but what we feel, you don't really see it. Just like gravity, you don't see gravity. You know that if you jump, you're coming down, but you don't like see this force kind of pulling you. So there's a lot in life we don't see. And I think our mind is somewhere in there, because our mind can do some crazy things. But anyway, I digress. The point I'm trying to say is, I want you to think of your mind like a Model X Tesla. So when you're in the car is driving itself. And that is you 95% of the time. We already talked about that. Researchers have found that we are not conscious, right? And that's why the Matrix is kind of cool, what they were trying to allude to. But it's the truth. You're not here. You're only here 5% of the time. All right. Since we've been on this call, I'm sure some of you guys have time jumped a ton. I mean, you went back to like 2 years ago. Some of you guys are like 10 years from now. I mean, you just go. I mean, your mind just start going. It's completely missing what we're doing here. So if your Tesla is driving you, right, your mind is driving you 95% of the time, guess what? You start to feel everything. So I'm driving, it's wet. The car starts shaking. If I am running over rocks, it becomes bumpy. Well, that's how we experience life. Somebody's mean to us, what happens? We're sad. Are we mad, right? Why do it have to be that way? Why do we have to be sad or mad when someone's mean to us? Why? In fact, some of us hold on to it for many years. So not only did that person, like maybe your friend, the one that shared all of your secrets. Some of you have like hurt deep down by that, right? And not only did they hurt you in that moment, but they're still hurting you like 3-4 years later. That's because you're in the car, you're in the model, and it's just driving you. But guess what? This is the key. I want you guys to know about anything I'm sharing with you. Who owns the car? Who owns it? Yes, I'm in the car. It drives me. But guess what? I own the car. So I'm in control. And guess what happens when I'm on the highway and it's telling me it has this like limit. It can't go over 85. And I want to go to 95, which I would never do, guys. I'm telling you right now. You should never drive fast. My point is, I'm like, I'm taking over, right? I am taking over. You're going too slow. So I want you guys to do that constantly. In fact, that is my mantra that I say to myself literally every day. So a mantra is nothing more like this powerful statement that you say that switches your mind into gear. That's what a mantra is. My mantra, honestly, is this. I literally say this every day. No lie. I say this literally every day, sometimes multiple times a day. I say, who's in control? I always ask myself that question. Who's in control? And the reason why I do that is because I started to find myself at times slipping into this like, the car, the Model X is driving itself. I started getting into my feelings and like, I'm upset about this, or I'm annoyed by this. I'm like, wait a minute. Who's in control? I'm in control. So I don't have to spend all of my time being annoyed. Why? It's a waste of time. And we already know that in order for you to come up with great ideas, you have to be in a higher emotional state. You can't be high emotionally while you're annoyed. So when I say, who is in control? I'd be like, of course, I'm in control. I'm taking over. I'm driving now. No more autopilot. All right. And I say, I'm not going to be annoyed. I'm going to do something about this, right? I'm either whatever situation is annoying me, I'm going to try to make change. All right. Does that make sense, guys? Thumbs up if you're getting it. You're like, man, everything you're sharing, I'm like locked in. I'm conscious now. You know what I'm saying? I'm not time jumping. All right. If you're time jumping, come back to 2020. I know 2020 hasn't been the best year for everyone. I've been enjoying 2020. All right. I need you back in 2020. All right. Thanks, Cassie, Max, Kaylee, Prim. They said they're back. They said they're no longer time jumping right now. They're present. They're here. All right. So now that you know that, you are the one that's in control of your mind, that means you need to start conditioning your mind to give the result that you want. Because guess who's been conditioning your mind all this time? I want to give you guys a guess. Who knows the answer? Who's been conditioning your mind to this point? Panchu, that's what I'm talking about. He says the villain. The villain has been conditioning your mind because guess what? Yes, your parents have conditioned you to believe something. So most of you right now, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it pretty much came from your parents. Because a lot of you are not really studying the issues. Most of you are not even impacted by the decisions, to be honest. You're still, in high school or middle school. So you're not even impacted by the decision that's made in politics. So you're like, whatever. But you kind of are like conditioned based on your parents. Your parents are like, hey, it should be like this. You're like, oh yeah, it should be like this, right? Most of you. That's conditioning. Your mind is conditioned a certain way. Marketing has been conditioning you all the way up until now. I can tell you that now. So all you guys who must have that, those Jordans, or like I must have this purse, or I must have Minecraft, whatever it is, that's marketing. Marketing is conditioning you to think that you must have those things because those things equate to happiness, right? That's conditioning. But the one who's had the biggest impact over you so far has been your villain. Your villain has been conditioning your mind. So I'm telling you, once you get out of the driver's seat, when you take over and you realize who's in control of your mind, then you condition your mind the way you want it to. So, case in point, we talked about this last time. If someone is mean to you, start conditioning your mind to say, hey, it's not about me. They're not being mean to me because something's wrong with me. They're being mean because they actually are hurting. Maybe somebody was mean to them. They're hurting. They don't know all this information. Start to condition your mind and say, wait a minute. Why do I have to be scared to talk in public? Like, why? Like, what's going to happen? To be honest. Yeah. Let's say I do say something awkward and people laugh at me. Who cares? Life still goes on, even though you get laughed at. Like, life keeps going. And most of the time, none of these people that are laughing at me, they don't even have a life coach. So I don't even expect them to behave a different way. They're behaving the way they're behaving because of their villain. So once you start to condition your mind like that, it literally unlocks you to complete freedom. You no longer have to do something because everybody else is doing it. You no longer have to hold back and be afraid to say things or to talk to a stranger or anything because you're not worried about if somebody's gonna laugh at you. You don't have to be afraid to try new things. Try a new sport. One time I had somebody that was like, hey, it was actually a female. She was like, I really want to do dance, but I feel like I'm too big. That's what she told me. And I'm like, okay, that's how you condition your mind, because who said that's the case? Let's think about it. Can you dance at any size? Yes. Hello? You can dance at any size. But what happened? Her mind was conditioned to believe that you must be skinny and thin or whatever you want to call it to be a dancer. Her mind has been conditioned. But you have the control to condition your mind the way you want to. Now, if you're getting that, give me a thumbs up. And now I'm going to challenge each one of you to at least condition your mind sometime today. I want you to do something that's going to condition your mind to either experience life to the fullest, to be happier, to be more confident, to be more proud of yourself, to be more thankful that you are the person you are, like to start, more self-love, something. All right. So that is your homework. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you for your time. I know I go over every time, but I appreciate you guys hanging out to the end. I hope you enjoy listening to the group coaching session. And I also hope that you are able to learn something that would help strengthen the relationship between you and your teenager. Until next time, this is a teen's perspective, helping parents see the future.